Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kiran Bendigeri from Grafosyss IAS. In this video, let's have a look at 6th Standard History, 5th chapter. What books and burials tell us? You may have heard about the Vedas. There are 4 of them: Rigveda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharva Veda. We can visualize that a Veda is wrapped by a sari. So sari, SARY. We can remember like this: S for Samaveda, A for Atharva Veda, R for Rigveda, Y for Yajurveda. Sari. So like this we can remember these 4 words. So I hope you people can remember these 4 Vedas. The oldest Veda is the Rig Veda, composed about 3500 years ago. The Rig Veda includes more than 1000 hymns. So what Rig Veda includes? It is having more than 1000 hymns. So what is hymns? Let's look here. Hymn is a type of song, usually religious, specifically written for the purpose of adoration or prayer, and typically addressed to a deity or deities, or to a prominent figure or personification. So hymn derives from Greek, which means a song of praise, right? This Rigveda, it consists 1000 of hymns called Sukta or well said. These hymns are in praise of various gods and goddesses. What we just saw, the 3 gods are specially important: Agni, the god of fire; Indra, a warrior god; and Soma, a plant from which a special drink was prepared. So we have to remember 3 gods, 3 deities: Agni, Indra, and Soma. These hymns were composed by sages. Sages means rishis. Priests taught students to recite and memorize each syllable, word and sentence, bit by bit, with great care. Most of the hymns were composed, taught and learnt by men. A few were composed by women. The Rigveda is in Old or Vedic Sanskrit, which is different from the Sanskrit you learn in school these days. So Rigveda is in Vedic Sanskrit, which is the older version of Sanskrit, which is different from the Sanskrit which we learn in school these days. So the most of the hymns were recited by men. The books we use are written and printed. The Rigveda was recited and heard rather than read. It was written down several centuries after it was first composed and printed less than 200 years ago. So first they used to only hear it and recite. Nowadays they are printed. Sanskrit and other languages. Sanskrit is part of a family of languages known as Indo-European. So it is an Indo-European language. Some Indian languages such as Assamese, Gujarati, Hindi, Kashmiri and Sindhi, and many European languages such as English, French, German, Greek, Italian and Spanish belong to this family. So we can see many Indian languages and many European languages belong to the same family. They are called a family because they originally had words in common. Take the words matra, Sanskrit, ma in Hindi, mother in English. Do you notice any similarities? Other languages used in the subcontinent belong to different families. For instance, those used in the northeast belong to the northeast Tibeto-Burman family. Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and Malayalam belong to the Dravidian family. And the languages spoken in Jharkhand and parts of the central India belong to the Austro-Asiatic family. So there are many families which we have to remember. So southern languages Dravidian, northeast Tibet and Burma are adjacent, so it belongs to those family, and the central part of India, Jharkhand, Austro-Asiatic family, right? How historians study the Rig Veda? Historians like archaeologists find about the past, but in addition to material remains, they examine written sources as well. Some of the hymns in the Rig Veda are in the form of dialogues. This is part of one such hymn, a dialogue between a sage named Vishwamitra and two rivers, Beas and Sutlej. These are tributaries of Indus. Those were worshipped as goddess. A page from a manuscript of the Rig Veda. So this is the manuscript which is written by hand. This manuscript of the Rig Veda on which bark was found in Kashmir. This is found in Kashmir. Was found in Kashmir. About 150 years ago, it was used to prepare one of the earliest printed texts of the Rig Veda, as well as an English translation. It is now preserved in a library in Pune, Maharashtra. So this is preserved in Pune, Maharashtra. Cattle, horses and chariots. There are many prayers in the Rig Veda for cattle, children and horses. Horses were yoked to chariots that were used in battles, which were fought to capture cattle. So battles were fought to capture cattle, and in battles chariots were used. So in chariots horses were yoked. Battles were also fought for land, not only for cattle, for land also they used to battle, which was important for pasture and for growing hardy crops that ripened quickly, such as barley. Some battles were fought for water and to capture people. There were several reasons for battles. Water, to capture people, to capture cattle and to capture land. Some of the wealth that was obtained was kept by the leaders. Some was given to the priests and the rest was distributed amongst the people. Some wealth was used for the performance of yagnas or sacrifices, in which offerings were made into the fire. These were meant for gods and goddesses. Offerings could include ghee, grain and in some cases animals. So how the captured things were distributed? So first part was kept by leaders, second part was given to priests and the rest were distributed among common people. And they used to perform yagnas also, and they used to sacrifice. So offerings would be ghee, grain and also animals. Most men took part in these wars. There was no regular army, but there were assemblies where people met and discussed matters of war and peace. They also chose leaders, who were often brave and skillful warriors. So at those time they used to choose leaders. It might be probably democratic at that time, but it is an assumption. So there was no regular army. People used to meet and they used to choose one brave and skillful warrior. Words to describe people. There are two groups who are described in terms of their work. The priests, sometimes called Brahmins, who performed various rituals, and the Rajas. These Rajas were not like the ones you will be learning about later. They did not have capital cities, places, or armies, nor did they collect taxes. So Rajas were not like the Rajas we read about in later part of the history. They had no capital cities, or they had no permanent army. They didn't collected taxes, and the priests were called as Brahmins. Generally, sons did not automatically succeeded fathers as Rajas. So we can see that Raja was elected. He was not from the same family. Two words were used to describe the people or the community as a whole. One was the word Jana, which we still use in Hindi and other languages. The other was Vish. The word Vaishya comes from Vish. Even now in Kannada we use Jana as the people. The other was Vish. So Vish is derived from Vaishya. Several Vish or Jana are mentioned by name. So we find reference to the Puru Jana or Vish, the Bharata Jana or Vish, the Yadu Jana or Vish, and so on. So we find the reference of Puru, Bharata, Yadu, a community, and so on. Sometimes the people who composed the hymns described themselves as Aryas, and called their opponents Dasas or Dasyus. So who composed hymns are Aryas and others as Dasas or Dasyus. These were people who did not perform sacrifices and probably spoke different languages. Later the term Dasa and the feminine Dasi came to mean slave. Slaves were women and men who were often captured in war. They were treated as the property of their owners, who could make them do whatever work they wanted. So slaves were captured during war, and Dasa men, Dasi female. So those were treated as property. While the Rigveda was being composed in the northwest of the subcontinent, there were other developments elsewhere. Let us look at some of these. Silent sentinels. The story of the megaliths. These stone boulders are known as megaliths. Literally, megaliths means mega means big, and lith means stone. These were carefully arranged by people and were used to mark burial sites. The practice of erecting megaliths began about 3000 years ago and was prevalent throughout the Deccan, South India, in the northeast, and Kashmir. So silent sentinels, megaliths, big stones, used 3000 years ago throughout Deccan, South India, and northeast Kashmir. Some cysts, like the one shown here, have portholes which could be used as an entrance. So this had portholes which could have been used as entrance. So we can see this. It is built using stone, right? While some megaliths can be seen on the surface, other megalith burials are often underground. Sometimes archaeologists find a circle of stone boulders or a single large stone standing on the ground. These are the only indications that there are burials beneath. There were several things that people did to make megaliths. So the same thing, archaeologists have found a circle of stone boulders or a single large stone. All these burials have some common features. Generally, the dead were buried with distinctive pots, which are called black and red ware. Also found are tools and weapons of iron and sometimes skeletons of horses, horse equipment and ornaments of stone and gold. So along with the dead remains, we have found black and red ware pots, and also skeletons of horses, horse equipment and ornaments, which is of stone and gold, iron equipment, horse equipment, axes and dagger. Find out about social differences. Archaeologists think that objects found with a skeleton probably belong to the dead person. Sometimes more objects are found in one grave than in another. So let's look at different locations. Brahmagiri. Here one skeleton was buried with 33 gold beads, 2 stone beads, 4 copper bangles and 1 conch shell. From this we can able to know what kind of materials they used to use. Other skeletons have only a few pots. These finds suggest that there was some difference in status amongst the people who were buried. Some were rich, other poor, some chiefs, others followers. So from these kind of things we can able to see there were many kinds of people, and they used to bury different things depending on their status. Sometimes megaliths contain more than one skeleton. These indicate that people perhaps belong to the same family, were buried in the same place though not at the same time. The bodies of those who died later were brought into the grave through the portholes. Stone circles or boulders placed on the surface probably served as signposts to find the burial site, so that people could return to the same place whenever they wanted to. So these were megaliths were sort of markings for the dead bodies, and people belonging to the same family were buried at the same place. Yeah, not at the same time, but at the same place. And bodies of those who died later were brought into these graves through portholes, the holes which we saw. Probably through these holes they used to keep the dead bodies. Okay. A special burial at Inamgaon. So we just saw about Brahmagiri and Inamgaon. It is a site on the river Ghod, a tributary of the Bhima. It was occupied between 3600 and 2700 years ago. Here adults were generally buried in the ground, laid out straight with the head towards the north. Sometimes burials were within the houses. Vessels that probably contained food and water were placed with the dead. One man was found buried in a large 4-legged clay jar in the courtyard of a 5-roomed house, one of the largest houses at the site, in the center of the settlement. This house also had a granary. The body was placed in a cross-legged position. So we can see that Inamgaon, it is a site on the river Ghod, and it is a tributary of Bhima. It is found 3600 to 2700 years ago. It was occupied. Adults were generally buried and head towards north, and vessels were found, and they have also found a granary, and the body was placed in cross-legged position. So these are the points to remember. What skeletal studies tell us? It is easy to make out the skeleton of a child from its small size. However, there are no major differences in the bones of a girl and a boy. Sometimes people decide on the basis of what is found with the skeleton. For instance, if a skeleton is found with jewelry, it is sometimes thought to be that of a woman. So if it is if jewelries are found with skeleton, then we assume it as a woman. However, there are problems with this. Often men also wore ornaments. During those days, men also wore ornaments. A better way of figuring out the sex of a skeleton is to look at the bone structure. The hip or the pelvic area of women is generally larger to enable childbearing. So the pelvic area of the woman is usually larger. These distinctions are based on modern skeletal studies. About 2000 years ago, there was a famous physician named Charaka who wrote a book on medicine known as the Charaka Samhita. Charaka wrote Charaka Samhita about 2000 years ago. There he states that a human body has 360 bones, but nowadays it is said that approximately 200 bones are there in human body. So 360 is much larger than the bones which we count. Charaka might have arrived at this figure by counting the teeth, joints and cartilage. Probably he might have counted teeth, joints and cartilage. Occupations at Inamgaon. Archaeologists have found seeds of wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millets, peas and sesame. Bones of a number of animals, many bearing cut marks that show they may have been used as food, have also been found. These include cattle, buffalo, goat, sheep, dog, horse, ass, pig, sambar, spotted deer, black buck, antelope, hare and mongoose. Besides birds, crocodile, turtle, crab and fish. There is evidence that fruits such as bear, amla, jamun, dates and a variety of berries were collected. So which animals remains have been found? We can see cattle, buffalo, goats, ass, pig, sambar. These are the animals found. Mongoose, and besides that birds, crocodiles, turtle. So there is also evidence of fruits like bear, amla, jamun, dates and variety of berries which we consume now also. Those remains are found at those sites. Elsewhere, find China in your atlas. China is north to our India. North, yeah. Around 3500 years ago, we find some of the first evidence of writing in China. These writings were on animal bones. These are called oracle bones. So they had written something on animal bones. So these bones are called oracle bones because they were used to predict the future. kings got scribes to write questions on the bones. Would they win battles? Would they harvest? Would the harvest be good? Would they have sons? So these kind of things they used to questions. The bones were then put into the fire and they cracked because of the heat. Then fortune tellers studied these cracks and tried to predict the future. As you may expect, they sometimes made mistakes. These kings lived in palaces in cities. They amassed vast quantities of wealth, including large, elaborately decorated bronze vessels. However, they did not know the use of iron. So Chinese didn't know the use of iron. They lived in big palaces. They amassed vast quantities of wealth and decorated bronze vessels. And you just saw about these bones. And let's see important dates. Beginning of the composition of the Vedas. Vedas 3500 years ago. Beginning of the building of megaliths. Megaliths, why? In the burial grounds, right? About 3000 years ago. Settlement at Inamgaon. It was between 3600 and 2700 years ago. And Charaka wrote Charaka Samhita. It was about 2000 years ago. So that's all for now. Thank you.